your country, you can find UNDP country office there. And then we normally work with the government and on the development agenda, but each government has different priority on development. Therefore, we have our area of work is also big. And then, so that's why it's sometimes, it's often very difficult for us to describe what UNDP do, because we do many things. But we have this 6 signature solution as a main area of work, and working against poverty, governance, resilience, and environment and energy, and also gender equality. And also our work is deeply connected to the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. And so again, this one, so who have heard about SDG before? Can you raise hand? Let's see. Oh, yes, many people know. That's good. Very good, very good. Yeah, actually, in Japan, we have the in the survey, it said that it's more than 90% of people in Japan knows about SDG. So not everyone knows the meaning, but 90%, more than 90% heard about SDG. And then actually the companies, private sector, they're taking SDG very seriously to, to run their business, but also they want to show their business is good for society and environment as well. And so the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, and this is a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by 2030. And so our 6 signature solutions and the SDG are deeply connected, and we are working on the development, aiming to achieve the SDGs with each government. And so we have many activity. And then today I'd like to introduce the project I'm working with. It's called Youth Lab. So Youth Lab is the project movement to mainstream youth leadership, social innovation, and entrepreneurship. So we aim to establish common agenda for Asian Pacific countries to invest in and empower young people to accelerate the implementation of the SDG through youth leadership, social innovation, and entrepreneurship. So this program is focused on the Asian Pacific, but actually very much share it's the Hesed World's initiative as well. And then this is our achievement so far, and we have engaged more than 300,000 young people, and also we have built capacity for more than 28,000, and then also young social entrepreneurship who led 3,200 entrepreneurship. And we also have ecosystem partners, more than 300 as well. So again, this is the program for Asian Pacific. We have worked in 28 countries and territories, but I'm in charge of the activity in Japan. And then our main activity is one is Social Innovation Challenge, which is SDG-focused business idea contest. And the other one is the Japan Dialogue. This is the dialogue between social entrepreneurs and ecosystem supporters. So Japan Dialogue, our aim, which is the panel discussion by young social entrepreneurs and other ecosystem stakeholders to discuss how to foster social entrepreneurship innovation in Japan. And then we are focusing on leave no one behind or principle, also looking at the global issues. And then so far we have featured female entrepreneurs, environmental entrepreneurs, and also inclusive entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship education, and then also focusing on the entrepreneur in the local area because they have different challenges and opportunity from big city like Tokyo. And then the other activity is Social Innovation Challenge in Japan. So this is a business contest, and we normally accept the business idea from 15 years old to 35 years old. And then from Japanese national or those who live in Japan more than 2 years. And we accept the business plan from an idea stage until the in operation for less than 5 years. And for us, the business plan, the quality business plan is important, but of course, the how to contribute to the SDGs is very important as well. And those who win the award through our Social Innovation Challenge, they get the mentoring support, grant support, and also the visibility as well. And then, because we have this public-private community collaboration, and then those are the main partners of Social Innovation Challenge Japan. We have academia from a university and equity finance, Amazon Web Service, a big global company and Japanese company, UNHCR as a UN agency, and then other ministry as well. Those, because the UNDP cannot do it alone, to support the youth, social entrepreneur, promote innovation, we need to bring many partners from different sectors. So this way we can bring bigger impact. And then so far in Japan, we have more than 300 applications and then 32 winners. Then actually 4 of them, they are Japanese youth social entrepreneur, but working in Africa. 2 of them work in Kenya, 1 is Tanzania, and 1 is Benin. So they're all Japanese, but somehow they have a strong will to improve the life, bring the better life in those countries. And also they are doing the business, not like NGO or UN work, but they're doing business by running their business, bringing impact for the society and the environment. So again, unfortunately, the Youth Collab is for Asia and the Pacific, but we have this web page which showed which listed the free online courses. Very useful for the social entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneurs. And you can just go to the website and click, and you can learn online. And in the same page, we have this global opportunity as well. Our colleague from Bangkok, they are updating the, any global opportunity, the challenges or the internship or those opportunities they are listing. So if you visit, maybe you can find the some scheme that you like to apply for. So please, it's free. Please utilize. And this is not my project, but UNDP, of course, has the big program in Africa. I'd like to briefly introduce this. It's called the Tokyo International Conference on African Development. We call it the TICAD. So this TICAD was launched in 1993, and it is the only international summit dedicated exclusively to Africa's development. And then this serves as a platform to review Africa's development progress, address emerging challenges, and build consensus on priority areas. This initiative has been co-hosted by Government of Japan, UNDP, World Bank, UN Office of the Special Advisor on Africa, and the African Union Commission. And then this TICAD 9, the conference, was held in Yokohama, Japan last August. And the theme was co-creation of innovative solutions with Africa. And the priority area included the empowering youth, women, as a key focus area. So as you see that the TICAD, many international actors see Africa as not the beneficiary, but the partner, you are the partner of co-creation. And so we need the mutual effort to realize the development how you want. And then so TICAD has many phases, area of work, but I just would like to introduce the Timbuktu initiative. This is a UNDP-led Pan-African startup support platform. This promotes the youth-led social innovation, contributing to the achievement of the SDG. So Youth Collab work in Asian Pacific, but the Timbuktu is for Africa. And then so far, Timbuktu has supported over 300 startups. Also established a thematic innovation hub in health tech in Rwanda, fintech Nigeria, green tech Malawi as well. And also they expanded the university-based innovation hub. It's called Unipod, which are in Benin, Uganda, Zambia, and others. So with Timbuktu, there are many activity as well. So maybe near where you live, or this activity is happening, and then they organize maybe event and some projects. So maybe you might have a chance to be involved yourself. So please follow UNDP and Youth Scholar. We have LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and those social medias. And then often when we have a public event, we upload, we post the event on the social media, and then make sure look for UNDP in your country, Malawi, Kenya. And then now, okay, another 15 minutes, I try to talk about my career journey. So this is not about the UNDP, it's more like my own perspective and my experience. So again, I'm from Japan. And then my hometown is called Yamanashi. And so this is it. And here is Tokyo. So it's next to Tokyo, but this is my hometown. And it's it's a small, ordinary town. But then somehow I always wanted to see the world, travel the world. And then for work, I wanted to help people in international context. Then, but at the time when I was a student, so my option that I could think of was only NGO or UN. Now you have another option as a social entrepreneurs as well. But so at the time, what I could think of is UN, and then I went to university in Japan, master degrees in England, and then I got internship in Belgium. Why? It's because that I did the research, and to become the UN official, of course, I need English. And also the often case master's degree is a basic requirement. So knowing this, I aim to get it for in my studies. Then after internship in Belgium, I thought I'd try to see the real needs in the field, because I know Japan and Europe, but I want to work in the other economic context and then the environment, and I need to see how the difference or what is the common thing between us. So then I applied for this JICA overseas volunteer in Jordan. So Jordan, maybe you know well, it's here in the Middle East. So this JICA Overseas Volunteer Program is part of the initiative from the Japan International Cooperation Agency. This is a government organization that advanced Japan's ODA, Official Development Assistance. And then part of this, JICA sent the skilled young professional worldwide to support grassroots development and global cooperation. And the field of expertise is wide, and it could be an ICT, education, agriculture, health. And then so far, they dispatched young volunteers to 99 countries worldwide. And actually, Africa is the largest share of volunteers. And I went to Jordan as a youth activity, youth engagement and an activity. Here's a Jordan. Then I worked in one of the girls' center, youth center in Jordan for 2 years. Then mainly, so the youth center has their own program. So what I try to bring the experience that they cannot have normally. So then like this, I organize some festival and show the Japanese dance. And then the second year, I trained our girls on the Japanese dance, and they perform in front of the people. Then after 2 years, I wanted to stay a bit more in the region. So I looked for the job, and then I got the 2 years contract, the Embassy of Japan in Qatar. So again, this is not to become diplomat, but the Japanese embassy, the MOFA, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they have scheme for this short contract job as well. So I applied for this, and then for 2 years, I worked as an advisor and a PR and culture attaché. So as a PR and culture attaché, my job is to promote Japanese culture to the Qatar. And so we brought the traditional musician or dancer to Qatar. And then this job is also very fulfilling, because if more people in Qatar knows about Japan, or if they like Japan, we have better relation between Qatar and Japan. So this will benefit to Japanese people as well. So, but through this, what I got in Jordan and Qatar, firstly, working experience with the community, and I learned the life in Jordan or Qatar on the ground. And also through the embassy job, I understand the work of the government. And then also new language as Arabic. My Arabic is not as good as I hope, but I learned the basic things. And then the most importantly, maybe the cross-cultural experience. And then I got this communication skill. Because how I work in Japan is completely different from other country. But it doesn't mean which is better or not. It's not always which is better and something like this. This is the way they work. This is the way I work. And then how can we approach and how can better work there in that environment? That's important. Try to understand that and try to maybe get used to. Then after that, yes, so my work in embassy was very fulfilling, but my dream was to work with people in globally, not only for Japan. So I applied for UNDP and I went to Sudan. So firstly, first year I worked in Sudan, in Khartoum. And then this is a beautiful country, has many history. Then from the second year, I moved to Darfur, Sudan. And this is the office. And then there, I was in charge of this youth volunteer rebuilding and Darfur project. So I asked my supervisor that I want to work with youth project. And then my supervisor said, okay, there is one project in Darfur. Do you want to go? And I said, yes. So this youth volunteer rebuilding Darfur project, basically, we train the university graduated Darfur youth for 1 month on the business and environment subject. Then after that, we send them back to their own community for 9 months, and they work as a volunteer to teach community what they have learned from this training. So we call them volunteer, but we provide some stipend as well. And this project was funded by Korea, Republic of Korea, and Japan. So then the summary of my learning is, I think in Sudan, this was my first career in the UNDP. And then what was important is this basic skill, and then responsibility, integrity, and accountability, open mind in the country and the culture, and take initiatives. The thing is, like, because I was new in the UNDP, also I was young, so I didn't have much experience. But I got this opportunity. My supervisor trusts me to send me to Darfur to allow me to work with projects. It's because I had this basic skill plus responsibility, integrity, accountability. And it means that basic things is what I did is when I receive email, I reply in a timely manner. Someone call me, I pick up and answer. And this is very, very basic. But if you cannot do these basic things, it's difficult to assume you can do more, right? So this first things is those skill sets are very important, especially for young people. And take initiatives that I said that I want to work with a youth project. Then supervisor told me, okay, then there is option. So if I was just waiting for the opportunity, it will never come. And you initiate. That's very important. And then, yeah. So just to summarize the maybe career advice I can make. And firstly, the important is to understand the job requirement. So whatever the job or work you want to do the research and what is the requirement to reach this job. For example, as I said, for the UN, often the master degrees is a requirement, so you will go for it. But in any kind of job which you are interested in, they have maybe necessary skill or necessary experience. So you need to know what is required, and then you know what you have to do next. Then also the working experience is important. But of course, for young people, maybe you don't have working experience, but you can make a volunteer internship, the other activity to back up your ability to show on CV. And then for the global context, of course, the language is important. But luckily, I think today you all know or speak English, so you have huge advantage. And then maybe you could think of learning other language where you want to go. And but at the same time, the English, to work in a global context, you need to acquire the good level of English. The English, you can manage people, You can make a quality report presentation as well. And then, for example, working at the UNDP, we have this program. As I mentioned, we have like a mainly 6 signature solution. It's very different area of work. So which one you want to work and what you need to know, what kind of experience you need to have. It's very different even in this program area. And also we have thematic profiles. We have in UNDP, we have communication, partnership, finance, human resources, procurement. And then those competency skills are very different from program officers. So again, you need to do the research. You want to know what is a requirement, the position you want to work with. And then for the skill set, in UN, we often said that we need this T-shaped skill. Like you need to have one specialty plus to have a broad knowledge. But now the world is getting very more complex. So people saying that, okay, maybe we need more specialty. More specialty is better, but it's very important to have this broad knowledge as well. Then, for example, this is the example of T-shape, and one might have this user experience expertise, but this is not enough. You need to know finance, you need to know the marketing, writing. So this is a T-shape. So just having one expertise may not be enough. It's depend on the job and work, but this is maybe important. And then for me, this expertise, what kind of expertise you choose is important. And this need to correspond with your passion. Because if you don't like the subject, you cannot keep studying or keep working on it. It needs to be something you like about. So lastly, yes. So then lastly, I want to summarize. And I think to start, most important is a passion. So what do you want to do in your life? Because again, this is long journey. And then even you like, it doesn't mean it's always easy. You face challenges, but because you like about, you passionate about, you can continue. So therefore, it's very important to know what you want to do. It's not like other people say, yes, the doctor is the best job. Yes, I want to become doctor. No, what you want to do is very important. And then often, I believe, I think what you want to do and for who. I think it's very fulfilling to do for other people, not only for you. But then again, basic skill, the human skill, this is very important. You can get this expertise by going to the school or working, but this basic skill, gaining the trust, those things is you should get now. And then, but the how, so at the moment, maybe you might find difficult to get the job directly, then try to engage volunteer or community work or initiate youth movement by yourself. Because this is not just free work. No, through this, you can gain the basic skill and also network, and you can get credibility. You can write on the CV that you have done this. And then next is the T-shaped, M-shaped skill. So for your passion and interest. And then if you cannot find it, I recommend to try the things if you have an opportunity. you think that, okay, this is not my interest, but if you have a chance and you don't know, you are still looking for your passion, try. And this way you will know, oh, actually, I like this. Or yes, I'm sure, I don't like this. So try many things and then again, do the research and then understand the requirement and also know yourself, what is good, what you like. This is very important. And then, sorry, lastly, it's a storytelling with global agenda. If you want to have a global opportunity, try to use those SDG or work of UN and NGO align with your passion. Because if you want to help the people in poverty, if you use it, I want to achieve the goal one of the SDG. This is a global language. People can share your goal immediately. So try to enter this global opportunity and the scheme. It could be volunteer, internship, and a one-day event, whatever, but to try to yes, get opportunity for this global event and yes, activity. Yeah, sorry, I passed too much time, but that's all.
Excellent. Well done.
I
Thank
think
you very much.
Gifty is talking and unmute.
Gifty, we can't hear you. Gifty. Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. I was sending a chat that the admin had muted everyone, so I couldn't unmute myself. Hiromi, thank you so much. That was awesome, awesome, awesome. I mean, I have pages and pages and pages of all of that, all you've shared. Before I hand over to Ezine, I want all of us to put it in the chat. What did you learn? What did you take out of Hiromi's session? For me, if for anything, right, I learned that I should know myself. Knowing myself and building my skills around the areas I am passionate about is something that I cannot and we should not trade with at all. That is the bedrock for any global positioning, and Hiromi said something, it starts locally. It starts locally. Tenacity. Thank you, Grace. It starts locally. What problem are you finding in your local community? That is where it begins. The world already has a lot of problems, so you don't want to be an additional problem to the world. So where do you begin from? In your community, what is that need? What is that need? Kiki said something when she started. Was it Kiki or was it? It was from the video, initial video. The video said something about African youth are not a problem to be solved. And the only way you can not be a problem to be solved is for you to first identify what that need is in your local community and find a solution to that need, right? Tochukwu said, I learned that you must love what you do and be passionate about it, right? Love what you do and be passionate about it. Know yourself and passion and who you are serving, because it's better to do for others. And then there's something I want to talk about: volunteering. Volunteering is one level of education that we have not really given cadence to. With volunteering, you can learn so much in a short time and build that capacity for the future. So I see Ezine is already ready to give us her own part of positioning, and most of, how do we build from capacity to capital? How do we take it from there? If there is something that you've taken from Hiromi's session, I want you to walk a little bit forward and connect it to what Ezine is going to say today, because that is the only way it would make sense. If you notice that Hiromi's pictures, it started from a very small community. And then what Hiromi took out was the pain involved in the process. the process of learning, the process where the spotlight is not on you, right? When nobody's even acknowledging what you're doing, you know that you are building the capacity for something that is going to position you for greatness. And remember that this greatness, let's bring it back to our communities. This greatness is not something just for us, but something to make our communities, the people around us, to feel that impact. And with all of that, we are all working towards what? The Sustainable Development Goals, right? Ezine, over to you. Ezine's session will technically focus on from capacity to capital. And during her session, she'll be answering key questions around what does positioning practically look like, right? Is positioning more about competence, visibility, or networks, or is it all the three of them mixed together? She would also talk about common mistakes that you should be aware of and that you should try to limit. And more so, where is the greatest opportunity gap for young people in Africa today? So if you have your pen, you took it aside, bring your pen back and your notebook back. We are going to learn a lot. Ezine, over to you.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Gifty, and thank you, Hiromi, for your presentation. I was taking a lot of notes. And, the journey to global relevance and global impact, it just starts with deciding that you want to do this thing. And it has to absolutely be bigger than you. It has to be about impact and what you're giving. And coincidentally, the theme of IWD this year is we give, we gain. So, when you give, you just have so much to gain. And thank you so much for at least setting the tone for what we're going to do today. As much as possible, I don't really have my slides. I feel like I'm so underprepared because Hiromi has like her receipts from beginning to end. But I'll try to take a slightly different approach and really speak to what I've done and, use storytelling to also make it a little bit, interesting for everyone. So I'll give a quick overview of 234 Finance. I'm the founder of 234 Finance. So 234 Finance is an ecosystem that basically supports entrepreneurs through what we call our core values, our 5 C's. So content, community, collaboration, capacity building, and capital. And everything that we do is anchored on all of these 5 C's. And I think what we're doing is capacity building today. So we're going to do a deep dive on capacity building. And at 234 Finance, we truly believe that all these 5 C's, they work hand in hand, for impact, for value, for growth, and even in entrepreneurship, right? So you need visibility. So content covers, I would say, visibility. You need community. If you want to go far, you go, in a community, in an ecosystem. So we're very much big on, collaborating. And I think that was one of the things that got Kiki and I to really connect when we met a couple of months ago. And of course, all of this will make sense when you have capital, right, to scale the impact of what you're doing. So our vision is pretty much to promote African entrepreneurship by fostering a thriving ecosystem through our core 5 values, our core values. So let's take a deep dive, positioning, how the market understands you. So what does positioning look like? I say that in today's world, you have, it's so interesting, like you have access to a global audience and anybody can pretty much get access to what you're doing through your content, through what you're sharing, and through how you position yourself. And regardless of our differences, our cultures, there's still so many similarities between us that make us connect and that make us inherently human, right? So when you're trying to push a brand, pushing a personal brand, I've seen that having a personal brand is not even anything you can shy away from, right? And what people buy or who people key into is actually the individual, then it extends to your business. So how are you positioning yourself that you're trying to solve for, right? Who is your target audience? What traction have you built over time that will get trust, that will get people to trust your brand? And how are you communicating the same messaging across different channels, right? And this doesn't even have to be complex. Sometimes we are aiming so high. I always say this, there's this saying in Nigeria that what you're looking for in Sokoto is in your Shokoto. Who is your immediate target audience? Who are the people you interact with? Who are your peers that you can sell your product or your service to? And how have you shown traction to your target audience before we start trying to conquer the world, right? And in your execution, because none of this will make sense in terms of building trust and building credibility if you're unable to execute. So do you do as you say? So this is, very, very critical in setting the stage for success in building a brand. How does positioning work? What would make your room, or what would make anyone recommend you? I've said, and I'm saying this with all sense of humility, right? 234 Finance, this was founded over 12 years ago. And I'm telling you, as recently as 2 years ago, we've still encountered challenges in scaling. And I would say this year is the first time that we've had in the first month of the year, we were involved in about 5 projects, none of which we tried to, like, all these projects came to us, right? Because over time, with consistency, if I go back to what I discussed in this slide, finding a clear problem, defining your audience, showing results, consistent messaging, and disciplined execution, this is what would lead to your name being mentioned in the room. And it's such a great place to be, right? Where you don't have to hustle, you don't have to look for anything. You can pick and choose what you want. And I'm sure with Hiromi and her role in, because I also want to tie it to what Hiromi said, because I'll really be piggybacking off of some of the, the notes that she made during her session, right? And where she's grown, she started as an intern. She's been in the UNDP ecosystem. She was willing to go to very difficult markets, I would say, compared to other regions, and she's proven herself. So I'm sure in her career she can pick and choose where she wants to be, and I'm sure she gets invited to so many platforms to push her personal brand. So if you're building a personal brand or you're building a business, establishing credibility and being consistent and disciplined execution is what will get you mentioned before you get into the room. And I know a lot of us are young here and we're just still, it may look so far from, where you're trying to get to if you compare with where you are now. But trust me, if you're able to even apply a few of these nuggets that we're dropping today, it would get you really far. So we're going to talk about competence, visibility, and networks. So competence, right, is the foundation of what will open any door for you, right? It's very important, especially if you're just starting off in a career. How do you build competence? I would say building competence starts from a place of passion. We had like a little recce run over yesterday, and it felt like we had kicked off this session, and I touched on a few of these points. And competence is built over a period of time, right? So how are you building competence? How are you building capacity? The title of this lecture is From Capacity to Capital. So competence is where you build capacity, where you build depth, where you have excellent execution and delivery. Of course, it doesn't come without errors, right? A lot of the professionals that you admire today weren't always like this. They went through a journey, they made mistakes, they were able to grow from those mistakes, and they were able to grow forward and become better in what they're doing and fail forward, because every mistake or every stumbling block you encounter as a young entrepreneur navigating the world of business, or a young career person trying to navigate career and development, there's so many resources. If I compare the access that we have today, even just, going on YouTube to watch videos, the resources are immense, right? So there's really no excuse. There's so many tools, so many skills that you can literally just, go on YouTube, go on the internet and teach yourself and monetize those skills. So I think, it's very important to establish competency and build capacity. And as you do this, if you're very early on in your journey, I would still try to link this to the IWD theme. We give and we gain, right? We give and we gain, build competence. And I said I would do a little bit of storytelling. So recently, because I support entrepreneurs and I'm always coaching, even when it's unsolicited, it's just something that I've realized that this is passion. So if I have an opportunity to, talk to a business, I always use that to coach. So we hosted an event last year, and a spa owner really, really wanted me to, she wanted me to see her brand and patronize her business. I get that quite a lot. So I go to the spa, and first of all, she wasn't very transparent that she didn't work on weekends, right? And that was the only day that I had free. So she gave me the impression that, okay, she was going to make it work and she was going to have, make it work somehow. So I get to the spa for this free appointment because it was like a complimentary gift so I can try out her spa service. And I was so shocked when I got there because she was the one giving the massage. And, I was just very confused because I thought to myself, but you're the business owner, like you're not a massage therapist. Why are you giving the massage? So first of all, there was lack of transparency because she was probably worried that I would reject the opportunity for me to come to her space and all of that. But she ended up screwing everything up because she's not a massage therapist, right? And I took that opportunity to kind of coach her and say, what, I'm happy to give you free, give you free coaching. And I linked her up with somebody that I think she should be collaborating with, because sometimes even when you run a business, you can have the brains, you can have the ideas, but you don't have to do everything by yourself. And I tried to give her that coaching, right? But what I want you to take out of this is she was willing to give a free service just to, show proof of concept and get that feedback. And for me, taking a free service, because I'm very value driven, so I felt the need to also give something back to this person. And when you're building competence in your journey, giving is very essential because it also helps you collect data and it helps you test your product to know when the market is ready for a product and you can now start monetizing. So when you've built competence or when you're building competence, the next thing is visibility, right? If not, all of this work would be called what they say winking in the dark and nobody sees you. I remember last year, I would never forget, just mid last year, I was having a conversation with a pair of mine. And, I somehow decided that I wanted to be an equitable trade champion. So this is something that I've always been passionate about, but I didn't quite know how to articulate that. Everything that I've been doing with 234 Finance and in my career has really been pushing for equity for Africans on a global stage, right? And somehow I figured out, I was able to put it into words like, okay, I want to be an equitable trade champion. And I'm the kind of person that will always bounce ideas through, I always surround myself with mentor figures, with people that I just know that I don't know it all. And I have a way of picking everybody's brain, you know. And I mean, my impact work and everything I've done, over the years spoken for me, but I wanted to start intentionally building a personal brand outside of 234 Finance, because I felt that 234 Finance has kind of, created a name based on the projects and the initiatives we've done, and I need to advocate for something, especially with, everything that is going on in the world with the geopolitical tensions and chaos that the world is going through. And I remember my friend saying to me that, oh, you need to start writing, right? So I took action. So I decided that, okay, you know what? I'm going to start writing on equitable trade, right? I'm very passionate about global affairs, about where the world is headed, about the global south and Africa's role on the global stage. And this was, I would say, about March last year. And I decided to take on, in fact, I had started doing some speaking engagements. And the thing with speaking, it's a very beautiful thing. When you start speaking and people know that you speak, over time, people start inviting you to speak. So that, there'll always be a season where you have to build your credibility through consistency and the other things I had mentioned. Then writing, right? So I decided to start a newsletter on LinkedIn called Bridge Builders, really. And that newsletter is, I think we have over 600 subscribers on that newsletter. Of course, I'm so busy, I'm not able to keep up with the newsletter, ever so often, but we have, a couple of articles that I wrote, consistently throughout the year. Then, of course, contributing, giving, right? In line with the theme, we give, we gain. And, in contributing, I'm just using myself as an example. So it gives us, sort of practical steps on how we can do this. I have, a good eye for media. I have a good eye for putting events together because we, put events together and, put initiatives together all the time throughout the year. And last year, that was where I met Kiki. Sorry, this year actually. Oh my gosh, so much has happened this year. I was part of the team that put together Nigeria House Davos. And this was the flagship. Nigeria has never, had a house. And this was immediately after my own event in December. It was the absolute worst time. Like, I had just come out of an intense couple of months of planning a Pan-African event only to jump into an international event. And it really stretched me. It really, really stretched me. But the success of the event, was so outstanding. Like nobody would know what went behind the scenes to put that event together. And since I've come out of that event, I've gotten approached for, based on the success and the execution and how everything went. I'm just using one example, right? To just give you how you can be visible and how you can push your personal brand. And of course, at the event, I moderated the panel, I spoke on the panel, I was very, very visible. And being a woman, being in energy as well, I play in the energy industry. So that gave me very good visibility and it gave me an opportunity to interact with industry colleagues. So visibility is absolutely paramount and just showing up, right? Showing up, staying true to your word, saying that you're going to do something and seeing things through. Sometimes, like I was saying before, it's not about the complicated things. Sometimes it's about simple work ethic, about core values, about trust, and some of the things Hiromi mentioned earlier. So I'm not going to try and make anything too complex for the sake of this discussion. Network, network, network is absolutely important. Access, partnerships, relationships, opportunities. How are you able to leverage a network? This is an entire masterclass on its own on building networks, maintaining relationships, expanding networks. How do you open doors for yourself, right? There's so many resources. If you, go check 234 Finance out and subscribe to our newsletter. We send newsletters, I think, twice a week on so many opportunities globally. And I'm sure Hesed World does the same. I'm sure UNDP does the same. And, just keeping an ear out for those opportunities. Right now, there's really no excuse. You can connect to anybody from anywhere. And I'll give you another example because I love to tell stories. So last year, and this is just, how I built my own network or how I connected with someone. There's this lady that we were following each other on LinkedIn. I don't know her from anywhere, but we had a few. She's in the oil and gas industry. She's South African, but she's also, has ties in Germany as well. And she also kind of positioned herself as a bridge builder, right? So I think that just tying my previous points to what I'm saying now, because of my newsletter, Bridge Builder, so she just kind of connected with me like that on LinkedIn. And of course, this can be a hit or a miss because sometimes I get some misses. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying, like, connecting with people digitally, right? So she connects with me, and for some reason, we just, we're looking at each other on LinkedIn, but we just never said anything until one day. It was my son's 10th birthday, and I never post anything about my family. LinkedIn, we try to keep it serious, but at the end of the day, it's always better to just be your authentic self, because the people that want to connect with you will connect with you just by being you. So I posted my son's picture on his birthday, and she commented on that post, right? And from there, we, entered each other's DMs. And a month after that, she was in Nigeria participating at my event and contributing immensely, right? And less than a month after that, I invited her to Davos. Actually, no, I went to visit her because, with relationships, so this is taking me to my second point, right? With networking, this is how I approach networking. Networking is depth. Think about it. You go for an event. How many people can you possibly connect with at an event that you would remember and you'll connect with genuinely for the long term? It's impossible, right? And if you're connecting, with everybody and anybody, you find yourself only reaching out to people when you need something from them, and it just feels very transactional. How I approach networking is to build depth, to build relationships, right? This was a South African that has never been in Nigeria, comes to Nigeria, takes the risk to come to Nigeria on my invitation. So I knew that I owed her a visit. Like, it was a no-brainer for me, right? Because we're humans, and that is just the natural human instinct, natural human expectation. Relationship is about giving and taking, right? And she invited me to her home in Dusseldorf, Germany. It was not the best time for me to go visit her, but I knew that if I really wanted to build this relationship, I needed to make that extra effort to go see her. And she hosted me so well. I met her husband, I met her children. She kept saying all the positive things. And sometimes I'm like, is it me this lady is talking about? Because she had come to Nigeria, that oftentimes, is very depending on who you're interacting with, it could be a hit or a miss. So I really, appreciated that she took that chance to attend my event. And, she had she only had positive things to say. And, I made sure I paid her a visit. And from paying her that visit, I invited her to Davos. And she came and she participated and she was very immersed in it. And now we're currently exploring opportunities, right? So I'm just using this one story to say how all of these things happen. And I'm using this story because this is someone I don't know. We don't have any connection. We just saw each other. We connected as women and as bridge builders and people that are passionate about the continent and advancing the continent. And we've made deliberate efforts to build a relationship, and we're building a relationship, and now we're exploring opportunities. And what has that done for us is build trust, right? Because trust has to be organic. And if you think about our continent, right? And that's something I always say, you have to put so much effort to build trust. So much effort. Like, you have to take extra steps. If you compare it with like high trust environments, maybe in Europe, maybe in Asia, in our continent, we really have trust issues, and we're dealing with a lot of trauma. So, as an entrepreneur, in building network, especially when you're connecting with people that don't know you, they just see you. How you show up is important. Your messaging and your consistency is important. Then taking the deliberate effort to build trust. Do as you say, right? And when you're interacting with people, when you're selling, you have to, I would say, on the promise and over deliver. Because if you're not able to build trust, there's no need talking about networks, because you build networks and you damage your reputation because you're not able to, work with the global ethical standards in terms of how you build trust or your delivery of your product or your service. So when competence, visibility, and networks come together, and are aligned, that is what introduces you, and that's what makes you influential, and that is what helps you execute and explore the opportunities that are in front of you. So what limits youth progression? Mentorship, I would say, is one of the things that we take quite seriously at 234 Finance through a sister brand called the Mentor Matchup. And mentorship, you don't need to think about mentorship so far, because sometimes, when you ask people who their mentors are, you're thinking about some HNI somewhere, some executive. And, I always say that growth, and this is how I approach growth. So I'm not going to share anything that I am not practicing. You can find mentors even in your peers, right? And it's such a beautiful thing because if you're able to do peer-to-peer mentorship, not that mentoring upward or finding people who are more advanced than you to mentor you is a bad thing, but there's also a lot of value that can be derived from peer-to-peer mentorship. And I think that's something that is quite important. If I think about friends of mine who maybe we all started businesses 15 years ago, they are all in very incredible roles right now, or they're doing incredible businesses. Their businesses are thriving, right? And if we've been mentoring each other over the past 10 years, it means that we're able to now add value to each other as we're growing and as we build capacity. So I think mentorship is very important, very, very important. And, finding mentors even within your environment, right? Who do you have access to? It could be a family member, it could be a colleague. Just look at your immediate environment and your extended environment, and you could have a mentor that you admire. There are people, thought leaders that I follow, and I admire, the things they stand for. You don't have to necessarily connect with mentors, but you can have mentors who inspire you from a distance. That's something worth exploring. And something about mentorship that I must say is when you're looking out for mentors, don't look for what to get. Look for what to give is always a good strategy. And this is something that, I apply in my work ethic. What we do at 234 Finance is a lot of it is powered by brands and corporate institutions. And we have this, I guess I'll call it policy. When we've worked with a brand and we've gotten value from a brand, our next interaction with that brand is to give, right? So the brand sees us as an institution that offers value. So even when you're approaching mentorship, you should really be looking at how to add value to your mentor, because even your mentors need volunteers. Your mentors, need support. And I'm sure, if you take a deep dive, you would see the areas you can add value, and they'll be more than happy to mentor you. And this, in the case of even your peers, right? Because nobody wants a friend who is just always asking, asking, asking. It should always be symbiotic in your relationships. So another thing that, you know, that affects progress is doing too much. I think it's always important to keep it simple, get the basics right, and establish proof of concept for what you're doing. Of course, when you're starting a business, sometimes, it's trial and error. But once you get something right, you monetize it, you put structure in place, you create systems, you create SOPs, and you perfect that structure, you collect data, and you don't try to be all over the place. You work as lean as possible and you focus on what the market is telling you. There's something I like to say: it's always good to be data driven, right? Let the market dictate to you what it wants. When I started 234 Finance, it started really as an economic website. But over time, we had to read the room and we had to redefine our offering to appeal to the audience, being Africa's bulging youth population that makes up the most amount of the population. And over time, we've had to change our languaging, to be able to appeal to our audience. You cannot avoid structure. And there's so many tools. I'm not going to go so deeply into it. I'm just going to touch on the basic that I'm sure we all know, but hearing it from us may help you also start taking this thing seriously. If you're trying to prepare for global opportunities, the you cannot boycott structure. And there's so many programs that are available. I know Hesed World has initiatives that they use to help people with capacity building. And building structure, of course, is not easy being an entrepreneur because you have to bootstrap. You cannot employ everybody at the same time. And that's why it's good to, be simple, monetize, and scale what you've monetized as quickly as possible so that you'll be able to, start building structure, start building teams, and, putting all the components together that will really prepare you for global opportunities. And of course, ignoring discipline, is also something that entrepreneurs lack, young people lack, but I don't think it's the people in this room. The people in this room are quite disciplined. We started the event in time, so I'm hoping that this is also the energy and the discipline that we put into our work as well. In Africa, there's something we call African time, right? That is not accepted globally. If you're trying to compete globally, if you're trying to be recognized as a brand, you have to be disciplined and you have to work based on global standards and you have to stand out. And the beautiful thing, right now, like I think it was Kiki that said that, 1 in every 4 people in the next couple of years is African. So the world is actually realizing it. And if you pay attention to the development communities, they've doubled down on their impact, their social impact work on the continent because they realize that it's very important to support, where the world is going to and where I guess is going through its industrialization, pre-industrialization stage, right? Strong youth population, arable land, lots of minerals, so many opportunities, young people with a lot of energy. So the opportunity is there, but are you ready for it? Is the question. Local to global. Okay. So what is required to compete globally? Standards, documentation, digital participation, and consistency. I believe I had touched on some of these things in how we can participate digitally. We all know how to use social media. We're participating digitally right now, so I don't need to overflog the matter. But if you talk about your industry, because I'm sure what standards and documentation and digital participation and consistency looks like in your sector of focus is very different. But thank God for AI and so many tools. You're pretty much able to get any information you need in today's world, right? For people who are particularly passionate about craftsmanship on the continent, you know. And there's something I like to say. I like to use Italy because I was in Italy for a couple of months last year. And the Italians are so proud of their culture, right? You go to an Italian restaurant and they'll tell you you have to eat pasta or you have to eat pizza the Italian way. But somehow they've been able to sell Italy to the rest of the world that even in some remote parts of Africa, you see Italian restaurants, right? And that's what, being true to yourself, being authentic. I think I'm already touching on my next point, means, but being able to standardize it and own it, right? Ownership. How do you protect your intellectual property? By being who you are, but making sure that who you are is palatable to a global audience. So this is something that is very important. I'm not going to delve in deeper than this because this may look like something else depending on where you're playing in, but I'm just using Italy and pasta and then being able to own, their brand. So the Italian brands, their leather goods, their food, they've been able to just somehow, the Chinese have done the same thing with Asian food, right? They've been able to make, and now I'd say jollof is also coming on board, the world is beginning to appreciate our culture. So you don't have to change anything about yourself, but how do you make sure you're able to show up for a global appetite and, show up documenting and setting standards for a global audience? So this is very important. So where is the opportunity gap? Of course, we can't ignore the opportunity gap that African entrepreneurs face. We think about equality, even for women, right? We think about exclusion from participating in global trade, access to capital, structural gap. And this is why we do what we do at 234 Finance, to create a thriving ecosystem that supports entrepreneurs that are not able to scale or compete globally on their own. And they're, literally able to handhold them and support them to address all of these things. 234 Finance, I would say, is 70-80% female in terms of the founders in our ecosystem. So we're very, very intentional about how we show up from SMEs with boots on ground, and just making sure there's inclusion and there are pathways for global trade and global opportunities. And like I said, there's so many resources available, so many websites. I actually did not put up anything, but I'm sure if you just go online and look for opportunities for young Africans, there's so many of these things out there. And please, I would really like to encourage you to, check out 234 Finance on Instagram, Facebook. We have a WhatsApp community where we share information. Over almost 1,000 members in that community of young people that are doing different things across Africa. And we're very intentional to support, there's so many problems. If you go through the SDGs that Hiromi had mentioned, there's so many SDGs and so many problems, but we've decided that what we want to tackle is, we want to support people with decent work. We want to support young entrepreneurs. We want to bridge the inequality gap, and we're, using partnerships to achieve some of these goals. So all of these supports, can be found, through connecting with us at 234 Finance. So capacity to capital. So I talked about authenticity, right? And I used the Italians and the Chinese as an example. So for you to be authentic, the first thing is to have clarity about who you are and what you want to do. And I say that our work is inherently an extension of who we are inherently, right? So once you have clarity on that, there are people that go on this entrepreneurial journey, but they're really not cut out for entrepreneurship, right? And you can see that Hiromi is not an entrepreneur, but she's creating impact. So I think clarity of your purpose is important, right? In anywhere you find yourself. So whether you're pursuing a corporate job or you're pursuing entrepreneurship, clarity is very important. Culture. Right now, culture is being monetized. Like I say, 15 years ago, it wasn't cool to be African. Right now, it's cool to be African. Right now, people are embracing our culture. People are, embracing our food globally. So that is in itself an opportunity, right? A lot is happening geopolitically that is bringing a lot of attention to the continent. And we really have to build our capacity and close our infrastructure gaps to be able to take advantage of this opportunity. But the world is beginning to look at Africa as an alternative global partner or trade partner. And, there's something I say that trade demands respect. And Hiromi said something about the Japanese and their approach when they come to Africa. They come to support. They come as collaborators, right? And I think, for you to scale, you have to have clarity, you have to have standards, you have to own your culture to where you're monetizing it and you're showing up as authentically as possible. And you build structure, systematic structure, and it's in the little things, it's in the digital tools, most of which are free, that you can use, to put structure in place. Is the little automation of even your WhatsApp, right? When you're uploading your products and your services, how do customers interact with you, right? Then your supply chain, how do you make sure it's tight? And how are you testing your product, testing your end-to-end structure, putting SOPs in place to make sure that you're meeting the right standards? And who are you testing? You should always have a market or have a group, like a focus group of people that you're testing out your products with, and you're doing almost like a stress test of the experience, the customer experience, and the product, and just everything. And you should take feedback well, because feedback is supposed to help you improve so that when you go global, because the thing about, being a business person, at such scale is that every little mistake can cost you very heavily. So it's very important to make those mistakes, within your small ecosystem to perfect the loose ends in your business processes. It's very exciting to say, oh, I want to go from local to global, but what have you conquered your local community? Have you put all the structures in place to ensure that, yes, we're ready for global dominance, right? So all of these things I'm saying is to say that ensure that you've established yourself and you're sure that you're sure that you're sure, and you find ways to test your product. Even when you're going global, you can test your product or your service with people in the diaspora. I'm sure, wherever you are in your country, you have access to a diasporan audience, right? Maybe a high school friend or a university friend that is living somewhere, across the world, that maybe you can test with your products and services and you get that feedback. You're able to build that back into your company and really, really prepare for global dominance. So how do you scale authentically? It's very important. I think I touched on some of these things, but I'll touch on the other things. In today's day and today's world, people are buying from people. With social media, even with LinkedIn, that used to be so serious. Now there's something called LinkedIn Top Voice, LinkedIn Top Voices. I've been on LinkedIn for as long as I can remember, from university days to, my first job hunt. And LinkedIn, what it was 15 years ago, is not what it is now. There's a huge appetite for people to connect with people. And social media is just a tool. So people want to know who is the person behind the brand. This was something I had struggled with 234 Finance when I started, because I just, wanted the brand to speak for itself. And, we started with our online blog and just online, but people were not connecting with the brand until we started Mentor Matchup and we're bringing people together, and people could now, connect me to the brand. That was what now started driving participation and helping us to grow our community. And of course, when you grow the community, how are you engaging the community, right? What do you do and how do you reward customers? I would say community engagement. I'll also kind of link that with loyalty, right? How do you reward loyalty? How do you keep people coming back? How do you encourage repeat purchases, repeat businesses? Employee ambassadors is so key, right? And that helps with, if you have good leadership, then that passion that you have, you're able to pass that back to the team. And, then the team is able to communicate the culture of the organization. But the culture absolutely must begin with the founder. Absolutely. When I look at the team that I'm building, and they're currently planning an event with the Canadian High Commission with so much protocol. And I won't say zero, but I have less than 10% input, because I am confident in the team that I have, and I'm confident that they're able to represent me or represent the organization how I would show up if I was there, right? And this is something that didn't just happen overnight. It was intentional building, intentional alignment, and coaching and training, and being able to replicate myself across the different team members in their different functions. And when you're able to do that successfully, then you'd see that the burden can be reduced from you as you scale. Because to scale as an entrepreneur, you cannot do everything, right? You need to be able to have, someone handle marketing, someone handle business dev, someone handling your social media and content, someone handling the back end of accounting, tightening legal agreements and all of that. But everybody is all working towards one goal, and pretty much playing like a football team, but some are playing defense, some are goalkeepers, and some are trying to score, right? And just understanding, building that team spirit within the organization, so that even when they leave the organization and move on to other roles, they now become ambassadors. Misalignment of partnership is so important. I was saying to someone earlier that for me, in partnering, when we decide to take on partnerships as 234 Finance or in my other ventures, the highest risk is the human risk for us, right? Alignment is so important. It's not about the project. There's so many great projects, and we deal with startups that are always looking for funding and all of this. But what makes us back any business or give a grant is really the person that is driving it, right? And this, this is also relevant to if you're looking for partners within your ecosystem, there has to be an alignment. If there's a misalignment, then you're going to cause issues, maybe in culture or in values or otherwise. Feedback is very, very critical, right? Active listening. You cannot know it all, especially if you're still, going through your scaling journey. Getting customer feedback is not just about what you want. If not, you'll be selling to yourself and you'll be the only customer. But what the customer is saying, what the market is is pushing you for, right? So active listening, collecting data, having an effective database management system, newsletters. There's so many ways these things can be done these days. And I'm sure if you go on ChatGPT or some of these AI platforms, you'll be able to see ways to collect accurate customer feedback. So what appeals to...
Can I just say that you got literally 5 minutes, because otherwise we won't get to the Q&A. But please go ahead.
Okay. Okay, sorry. So I'll try to rush through my slide. I'm just trying to check what slide I'm on right now. But I think I'm getting to the end, so don't worry. So I'll rush through. Okay, yes, I'm almost at the end. Don't worry about it. So I'll rush through investor appeal. I always say this. I'll just touch on one thing on this slide. Early traction, right? Build your traction, because when you build your traction, at the end of the day, you would have a say. You're not desperate for investors. You're not putting yourself at risk of a misaligned investor coming to take over your business and possibly buying you out. And when you build your traction, you're able to grow a business that is able to sustain itself. And by the time you're ready for investment, you would know that you're ready for investment. I'm not going to touch on all of these points because of time, but I'll really touch on it. So when do you know when you should ask for funding, right? Before validation, like I had mentioned before, it's very important to build your traction, to test your products and services. Start with your family and friends, your immediate network. And when you build your traction, of course, you have revenue, you have steady cash flow, the business is able to be balanced, and you have a good growth plan in place. You have an advisor or a mentor figure in your life that is able to guide you. And by the time you're ready for scale, then you would know the type of funding, because every business is unique, right? Some businesses require debt, some businesses require a blended finance of debt and equity. Some business require outright venture capital, depending on the type of business, whether they're tech enabled and all of that. And what are the red flags, that that you're not ready for investment? If your value proposition is weak, you're not ready. If you don't have traction, if your projections are not realistic, if you don't have a strong feedback loop, you have team gaps, and you have ethical concerns, you're not ready to bring a third party into your business. I wouldn't go so much deeply on that. How do you get authentic influence organically? Strategic partnerships is key. Building thought leadership, I had touched on that. Building community, accessing the opportunities, free money, right? But free money isn't enough to help you scale, but it's enough to build your traction while you're scaling. And of course, being able to share your success stories would help you go really far. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much, Ezine. Thank you so much. This is a perfect segue from Hiromi's session to your session, because of course, as we've heard, right, you cannot build that capacity internally without transitioning and positioning that capacity into something that can provide capital. Capital not just for you, but capital to the people around you. Your community must first feel that impact before the global community does. So thank you very much, Ezine. We have I'm giving myself less than 20 minutes. We have less than 20 minutes. Ebonoluwa has shared the LinkedIn link to the organization's LinkedIn page, Facebook account, Instagram account, X account. Let's continue those conversations there. Let people know that we have learned so much. Remember, my friends and I used to say that friends that learn together, they stay together, right? Take it to your social media platforms. Let your friends know what you have learned. But more so, let your community know that you are actually positioning for something great. Because of time, I'm just going to share 2 things I have learned today. I have learned the importance of building bridges across relationships. Not just what I'm going to take from this mentor, but what value can I add to this mentor? How can I make this mentor's life easy? Another thing I have learned, or I have relearned, is that it's easier to destroy trust than to build it. So the trust that took you many years to build can take you less than 5 seconds to pull down. So how do you position yourself in a way that you're staying relevant to your network, but mostly you're building the core and needed skills? Some people call it soft skills. I call it the necessary and critical skills to sustain relationships. So Ezine and Hiromi, the first question, I think, is Hiromi, that question goes to you. I'll just ask one question to you, Hiromi, and one to Ezine, and then throw back to the audience so that we have enough time. What signals make international institutions take young professionals seriously? What signals? What is that signal that I should have as a young person or young people should have so that international institutions can take them seriously?
Yes, so I think I have the same frustration and issue. I'm working with the youth project, and then now I can see who is really value or understand the value of youth, or sometimes youth can be used as in the showing the diversity, ensuring diversity kind of thing. But anyway, so I think I'm still finding the way, but so far what I think is the youth had the potential and also the capacity already. So you young people should show this. So I would say maybe same as this relationship it is in mentioned about that, think about what youth can give to the international organization or society. Actually, you have lots to give, but you might think, I'm younger, you don't know, I don't know, maybe they know better, something. No, I think we want to know your perspective in your performance. So try to, yes, bring, please, bring, offer what you have. Then this way, you are the partner. It doesn't matter you are younger or less experienced. No, you are our partner. Then this way, it's not charity from the organization as well, right? Because your partner, becoming the partner, maybe this is the effective way.
Sure. Thank you very much, Hiromi. And I couldn't agree less, right? Remember, we've heard so much from the video from the beginning, Kiki, Hiromi, Ezine, everybody saying that the world is pivoting around young people. The decisions we make, the strategic conversations we have, the world is moving towards making sure that they fit into what we want. So as young people, what do you want? How do you, create that niche for yourself? But I'm just going to add on one thing Ezine mentioned. And Ezine talked about standards, having standards. That is standards that cuts across everywhere. Integrity, everything. Integrity, honesty, everything. Make sure that your standards are clear. Ezine, the next question, the only one question I have for you is, before we move into the questions, the live questions, how important is governance at early stage? So now, Ezine, I want you to talk about governance in terms of personal and organizational. How important is governance at an early stage?
So corporate governance is quite important. Governance is one of the elements of ESG that the world is paying attention to, especially if you're talking about accessing capital, right? And there's a lot of information that is available to learn about putting corporate governance in place. Of course, if you're just starting out, it could just be in the simple things. You're not going to take an overhead of putting someone that would be on an advisory board and you're paying fees to. And this is where you can leverage off of mentorship, right? Finding people within your network that can support you and you trust, that can bring a skill set that would help your organization have the right structure in place. And I think, having good governance is a very good foundation to build if you're trying to scale globally. So, and there's information out there on how you can go about doing that is relevant to your business. Because when you have governance in place, it's easier to access capital as well. Because at the end of the day, like I had mentioned earlier, people are more, or institutions are more, interested in the people that is governing an organization than the business itself. So having the right hands and having the right governance structure, the right reporting, accountability, auditing, governance, is such a deep topic, but is increasingly becoming important, especially if you want to scale and you want to access any type of capital that is significant. I hope that answers the question. I'm going to share a link. I had seen that there was a request for a link, so I'll share it now on the
Okay.
WhatsApp group.
All right. And while we wait for the questions, I would just say we have one question from the live session. Every other person, let's try to engage on social media to build our momentum and drive traffic. Kiki, my one question to you, and that question, that question is around imposter syndrome. How do I beat imposter syndrome so that I'm able to position myself for global impact?
Okay, thank you very much. I think this is extremely important. No one knows you better than yourself. And there are values that actually, whether it's from your parents or from someone, if you're someone who believe in God or religious, there are certain things that you follow, right? That drives you. That itself should lead you. So first of all, don't look at what other people are doing that is somehow seems so flashy, and just decide for yourself what is important. And I'll give you an example why. When I was when I was working for the United Nations for quite a long time, so I worked for two different agencies: United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction and United Nations Environment Program from Finance Initiative. I was a banker before I joined the UN, and when I was moving to UNDR, because they didn't know enough about private sector, I was brought in to help them to cultivate it from scratch. And that's where I met Deborah, who you know. I will tell you that journey was probably one of the most painful journey in the world. Why is it painful? Because unfortunately, you will have colleagues who, because they don't understand who you are and what you're bringing to the table, try to cut you off before you even start. So that's one bit. And if I have becoming really nervous because they know about the disaster risk themselves. I'm not a disaster risk expert, but I do know partnership. I do have relationship. And I've been so blessed that when people see me, they see the real, I would say the God in me. And because of that, normally, most of the people I know have always been with me. But then it comes to a point whereby the challenge was so much that I was starting to doubt myself. Am I real or am I not? And I remember going and praying and asking for divine intervention, basically. Fast forwarding, guess what happened? Something that I start from that nothing, then started to climb up. So much so that now I'm starting to travel everywhere in the world. And that provoked another kind of jealousy. So you cannot win, but if you know yourself well enough, if you are sure of who you are, if I've been listening to everyone here, everyone starts from somewhere, right? Just remember, if you want to make it, it is possible, honestly. Just a little step at a time. And look, we're all here to help. Esene is here to help. Hiromi is here to help. Gifty from you're help to help. So Hesed World is also hopefully we're also here to help. So I hope that answered your question. Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Kiki. So our YouTube friends, our online friends, we did not forget you. So one question from our online friends, and then I would hand it over to, I'd give my summary and then hand it over to Kiki.
Maybe give them a couple of questions because I feel bad that we didn't have the opportunity to open the floor for them. Sorry. Okay.
Okay. 2 questions, 3 questions. Let's see. We have one from Bonaventure. We have Jeff. Anybody seeing anybody? I see only Bonaventure and Jeff. All right. So Bonaventure. Feel free to unmute yourself. I mean, can you give, yes, all right. And Bonaventure, let's just go straight to the question because of time.
Yes, good evening. I guess you can get me.
Yes, perfectly.
Yes, thank you. So thank you for the panelists. Thank you for everyone for yourself, for everything that you did. So it's pretty amazing. So I attended last weekend. I attended this global citizen forum, and the minister from Rwanda, because I'm from Congo, she mentioned something very great, and I'd like us to tell me more about it. As a young leader, as a young entrepreneur, where do you recommend me to be? Do you get that? Like yes, where do you recommend me to be as a young leader, as a young entrepreneur? Because I'm now studying, is it enough? Like, is it the right place or the place which is enough for me to grow as a leader, to grow as an entrepreneur? Please, I need an answer for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonaventure. Hiromi Ezine. Anybody wants to take a stab to the question?
Yes. For me, like again, it's the same thing. The passion. That you need to find what you want to do and you like to do, and then you decide your model of youth innovator, social entrepreneurs, youth innovator or leader, because we have many fields to play, and then where you want to go and what you want to do. So it's more like you can find where to go. That would be my message.
Thank you, Hiromi. Ezine, do you want to add anything, or Hiromi touched on?
Yes, I absolutely agree with Hiromi. Everything starts with passion and being open. I think being open is also because, sometimes you accidentally stumble on opportunities that probably were not in your original plan, and it ends up being a very beautiful journey. So I think openness and having a sense of purpose, is what you should take on if you're exploring any opportunity. And even if it takes you through, and a path that was not in the original plan, just enjoy the journey as you go along, especially if you're young, because when you get older, you wouldn't have that sort of opportunity to take, all kinds of risk like Hiromi took when she was younger. So this is the time to go look at it as an adventure, really, and an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to become better.
Thank you very much. Jeff, did you put down your hand? I'm going to take, is it Fashiat? Okay, and then Lauren. Just those 3 questions because of time, or those 2 questions because of time. Every other person, feel free to engage on social media. Let's get social media talking about today's event.
Okay, good evening, good afternoon, or wherever or whatever time we are in our side. Thank you for the very insightful session. I really appreciate all the facilitators and panelists for sharing their ideas and enlightening us. So my question is, for someone or for a young person who has multiple interests, we are believed or we are told that we should have what we stand for what people know you for. How do we handle having multiple interests? How do we position ourselves if we have multiple interests and still stand as people can identify what you do without it being mixed up? Thank you.
Would you like me to take that? Can I go ahead?
Yes, absolutely. I'm
So,
trying to unmute myself.
okay, so this stray bullet just hit me because I struggle with that. I have it's not weird, and it's actually a gift to have multiple interests, right? To be very dynamic, but it's also important to know what to prioritize per time and why you need to prioritize it, right? Because you'll always struggle with balance when you have multiple interests. And even more so, as a woman, just being a woman, you're so multifaceted, you know. For me, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a career person. I run 234 Finance. I've just started an executive program, so you're always going to struggle with balance. And, as women, that's just sort of it's also a blessing because you also see women, really thriving because they've been able to balance multiple hats. Of course, it would be unrealistic to say you can do it all at once. So something is always going to have to give because different things are fighting for your time. So the sweet spot is knowing what is important or what you need to be pushing per time. And, after a while, you will kind of get the hang of it. And also being very disciplined and very militant is what I say with your time, right? You have to learn the art of time blocking and, setting aside time for different things throughout the day, right? And that may look different for different people because people also have their productive hours. For me, I do best in the morning. 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, that's like the average time that I wake up and I'm doing my morning routine, I'm doing my prayers, and I'm diving into work, right? Then I have to time block if I have certain meetings scheduled. If I don't schedule anything, if it's not on the calendar, it ain't happening, is what I like to say, right? So you have to be very, very disciplined with your time and allotting things and being also give yourself grace as well. You cannot we're very limited as humans, and it's very important to acknowledge that and plan, with that understanding that we're limited. You're not a superwoman, you're just human, right? And if you're able to play with your strength and you're able to build an effective team that complements the skill set that you have, then you'll survive, you'll thrive. Sometimes there's something I think is important to mention. Sometimes what you're passionate about is not what puts food on the table, right? So being able to identify your passion versus what puts food on your table, that could look like working a corporate career for a period of time while pursuing your passion. I like to say that when you're passionate about something, you shouldn't put so much pressure to monetize what you're passionate about, right? 234 Finance, when I tell people it's 12 years old, it feels like, what have you been doing for 12 years? But this is my impact work, right? So it's a business that I've nurtured and now it's scaling without the pressure of, you know, trying to monetize it. Of course, that pressure comes because when you have projects to execute, you have, to raise donor funds and all of that, that pressure comes. But now what I've done is I've created a different income stream that basically does what 234 Finance does to support entrepreneurs, but we focus on supporting governments and institutions. Same thing, same team, just a different income stream and a different target audience, right? So also knowing how to effectively use your skill set. So even though I do different things with 234 Finance, and the company that services these institutional clients and development partners and government, right, is the same skill set, but just a different target audience. So I'm not having to move away so far from what I do and what I know and the competency that I've built within my team. I don't know if that gives any
Yes.
sort of clarity. All right.
Thank you very much, Ezine. Kiki, do we still have some time, or should we move
No,
to?
I can see two people who have,
Okay.
Jeff came back and Lauren. Once we finish with them, then we can wrap up.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Lauren, keep it sweet, straight, direct. Same things to do with Jeff. Lauren, we
Good
can't hear
evening,
you.
everyone.
Sure.
I don't know others. It's morning. Okay. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
we
we can
can.
hear you now.
Okay. Greetings, everyone. This session was really uplifting. Myself, my question is, I'm seeing a lot of women, and there's women in this platform, and that's inspiring. One thing I really wanted to know is, when it comes to these platforms where you're growing and you put yourself in opportunities where maybe you might have been given a role, and in that role you also meet other male figures that are also having that role. So there's this thing where I've had experience where I was appointed president for a particular training, and I also had a male partner as well. But then I saw that there was this kind of dominance that was coming from a point where it was because I was a girl, and because maybe it was like, it felt like, no, you're a girl, you're not supposed to lead better than I am. But it was never a point where who is better, but how can we best work together? So for me, that was the first thing. And it was actually, I didn't know how to go on about it because I didn't want to go overboard and overreact. But I do know that those challenges do come in the way, and they're out there, they're a lot. But if you guys have also had to experience that, how best can somebody go on with it if they have to experience that thing again in the near future, and how it can also help them to grow and be able to communicate and work together as a team and not as opponents? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Lauren. I would have Jeff ask his question. Okay, go ahead,
Nifty, I'm
Kiki.
actually happy to answer a little bit. So I will tell you, I went to a British boarding school, and even though I was the only African, I got my brothers and sisters, but they were younger. So anyway, we were the only African in the village, as they say. I was voted a joint school captain, just means the head of school, right? And I have another person. And it was quite clear that the guy, especially in this kind of boarding schools, were going to be the ones who would get all the glory and stuff like that. To be honest, that didn't bother me. You know what I did? I just make sure I excel. I was focused. All the students trusted me. Whenever there's a problem, they come to me. At the end, the headmaster had to say, wow, with Kiki, everything gets done. So don't be put off by what the other person is doing. Try as much as possible, try and bring that person in, but be focused in terms of what you've been asked to do. That would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kiki. Jeff, except
Thank
any
you
of the
for the
speakers. Okay,
I wanted to contribute to what Kiki said. So,
sure.
for my career, right, I play in the oil and gas industry. And one thing about the oil and gas industry, it doesn't know gender, right? So you're either competent or you're incompetent. So there's nothing about gender that, I mean, of course, gender has, its role, but the thing, with competence is when you come in to a space as a professional and you're also not using your gender to get favors, right? Because there's also that, right? The world is not the world is waking up to the greatness of women. In fact, a lot of the C-suite roles, and even leadership, right? Some countries have female prime ministers, female presidents. So it's not strange to have women taking spaces, but are you competent enough to, to compete in a field or to be visible in a field that that is male dominated? And also, no one is telling you to not show up as who you are. And that's the beauty of being a woman. You play to your strengths, you play to your soft skills. There's a space for that, in leadership and in corporate opportunities, or even in entrepreneurship, how you manage communities. There are things that come so naturally to women that actually serves as a competitive advantage. So I think, when you're competent as a professional and you're able to play to your strength as a female and not see your gender as a disadvantage, rather as an edge, an advantage, and you're not trying to compete with the men, but you're trying to complement the men, because there's a space for women and there's a space for men, in the workforce. And, I think you'll be fine if you take that sort of approach.
Thank you very much, Ezinne. Jeff.
Thank you for such an opportunity, and it's a great session. I'll just go straight to my question. First, I'm avoiding to use the young people or youth, but allow me to use the Gen Z. So a majority of the Gen Zs, they usually have a tendency, or rather a norm, whereby they try to emulate a given person as a role model, so that they can better in the area where they are passionate about. But at the end of it, emulating their mentor, or rather emulating people who they are looking up to, they find themselves losing themselves. In a better word, I can say their self-identity get lost in between. That's the first question too. Just as Nani had said before, there are even this meeting, there is a lot of women compared to men. And some years ago, women were considered as a weak. Sorry to use that word, but we were talking about gender equality and things of such. But currently, putting in place measures and organizations and NGOs have come into place, and now the gender equality thing, as in bracket, which we used to talk about some years ago, it has now turned out to be different thing. Currently, men are now people who needs that more than women. And the last question, we young people at times find it very hard to balance between gift, talent, and profession. So those are my three questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Hiromi, Ezinne, Kiki, how do we want to spread it? Feel free to jump into any of the portions from what Jeff has asked.
For me, sorry, maybe Jeff could, I couldn't understand the question. Maybe you could give me one in short, or Nifty, you could help me.
Sure. Jeff, do you want me to? I can take a stab.
Yeah, go for it.
Sure. So as Hiromi, Jeff is asking, how do you, if I got his questions correctly, how do you, in the midst of so many, how do you focus on, chase one area instead of chasing so many areas, right? In today's world, everything looks very glamorous for young people. How do I chase one and run with it to the end?
Well, then I think again, my answer is always passion. So to look for the passion, that you try many things because you don't know what you actually like or not, and then looks glamorous, but if you don't like it, you cannot continue the sustainability. It's very important. Then, for example, I started studying human rights because I thought this is important for working UN. But after working the Sudan with the young people in the livelihood, I thought the business is very important. So then I studied again in the business, which I never imagined when I was younger. So try many things and then find what you like. I think that's my advice.
Okay,
Thank
I
you
can also
very much.
I can also jump in. I think you talk about the self-identity, you know, emulating a role model, and and Jeff, and you were also mentioning how do you make sure that it's okay to kind of like you have someone who's a mentor and you like what they're doing, but at the same time you don't lose who you are as a person. So I think you've already more or less answered that question, and that is that yes, it's lovely to have a role model. They can only take you thus far, but in the end, what you need to do is process the information you're getting, right? And then internalize it and ask yourself the question, is this thing working for me? Yes or no? Or have I learned to a certain point that I need more? Because it might mean someone who's a role model for you might be just for that point in time, but the next stage of your life, they might not actually be the right person. So trust in who you are as a person first. I think you know yourself better than anyone else, if I can say that. Okay. Gifty, over to you. I think we need to wrap up. We're 10
Yes.
minutes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone. I mean, I would be on social media dropping all of the things I learned, because if I want to put a summary into it, our time is almost up. Remember, Ezine said something that I want us to hold fast on. If you're thinking of being a social entrepreneur, if you're thinking of being a for-profit entrepreneur, remember that you are the legacy to your business, right? Everybody knows you first. The integrity you've built, the life you've built, the impact you've built, the relationships you've built, and the impact you bring to those relationships is what helps and sustains that business, that social enterprise, that for-profit entity you're building. Hiromi spoke and shared about her journey. And one of the things I have learned, and I want us as young people to hold fast to it, is resilience, 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 and be open to learn. Be flexible. Being rigid does not pay anyone. Observe the trends, see where the world is moving to, carve a niche, run with it. Even if the noise everywhere is so loud, carve a niche for yourself, deepen your roots in that niche so that when the right time comes, it is easier for opportunities to come to you because your roots are way deeper into the ground, because you have built a niche for yourself, you have positioned yourself well for real impact. Kiki, over to you. About mentorship and the call to action. Thank you very much. Kiki, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry. I said gifty. I have to say you're definitely a gift. Yeah. So you have been absolutely wonderful. We're so grateful. So just to go straight to the point. So we do have there's two main things that we've actually established. One is the youth community, which I have to say, I have such an amazing team and their youth themselves, and they are taking over this thing. I am so blown over because all I'm doing, I'm giving them the space. And because I think one of the speakers talk about the peer-to-peer learning, they are willing to take that forward, and now this thing is growing. So thank you to my Hesed World team very much. I think that people who might not know it, please check up our social media. It's there and it's on our website. Now, there is something else that we're actually building, and this is kind of the conversation. We started with a survey on mentorship program because the mentorship for us is about mindset change. What I've noticed is that it's not that the youth cannot do it, but it's often it's scary. The world can be very scary, but that's where you actually need a little bit of a change of mindset. When someone said to you, you cannot do it, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're right, but if you can just change your mindset, that's why our mentorship program is really looking at how do we get a mindset change? Because if you wanted to go, if someone said to you, you cannot do it, right? What happens most of the time, if you believe them, you will not be able to do it. But when you have a mentorship program, which we're trying to do, which is aiming to connect young people with experienced professionals who can guide them in terms of career and entrepreneur's journey, then what happens is that you get that moment, you get that lift. And I'll tell you one story. When I was in UN disaster risk reduction, I had, my mentor happens to be the secretary. She's the Special Representative or Secretary General for Disaster Relief, Margareta Wånström from Sweden. When everything was really tough, she will always motivate me, very small, very unique, but honestly, what she's able to give to me, this is the reason why I'm able to share with you guys now. So please, our mentorship program is extremely important. Now, in terms of my final kind of takeaway before I thank the speakers, I think, especially when I look at the Africans, especially the ones I met, I think that Africans, you've got the gift. One in four people, young people are going to be African by 2050. This is your unique opportunities. So in the global West, what they need is people who are ready for partnerships. They're not looking for people who say, give me, give me. That's not what they're looking for. People who they know eventually that they will have to partner with the Africans because you're going to be one in four, right? So how do you position yourself? Please, and that is the details that you've learned today. Hiromi and Esene have said it really well. Discipline, focus, be on time, right? Make sure that no one knows you better than you, and you start with a little step. It might take a while, but you will definitely get there. And the other thing I wanted to say is that respect people around you and respect the process. The process may be up and down, but it's life. One of the things I would tell you is that I am so thankful to God that I have gone through all the interesting experience you can ever think of, because without that, we wouldn't be talking to you today. So for that, I just wanted to say, please take on whatever you learn now. We will have some of the a video on our social media. Look over it again and reach out to the different communities that we're generating, and also to the community that SNA and UNDP that Hiromi was talking about. So please, your engagement, if you engage, it shows growing community committed to supporting the next generation. So thank you again for being part of this conversation. And we are looking forward to continue this journey together. And lastly, I have to say thank you to our moderator. Please allow me to just clap for our moderator. She was absolutely on fire. Thank you so much. That was excellent. Thank you very, very much indeed, Gifty. And SNA, what a journey it is as well. Just meeting you in Davos in January, and look at what we're able to do today. Hiromi, I met Hiromi in February. I think I met Hiromi, and now we're here today. So all I'm saying is that remember what she talks about, networking. You meet someone today, tomorrow you never know what's going to happen. Even in this community here right now, someone that you meet, even by chatting, can actually change the direction of your life for good. So thank you so much, everyone. We're sorry we're over 20 minutes late, but this is because it has been quite interesting and engaging. So again, I want to thank my team. They have been incredible, and I know that they just have that video that was not able to be shared. It's only 2 minutes left long, and please, if we can just allow them to share that video, and then we can close the meeting. Again, Gifty, you have been a gift, really. Sincerely, thank you very much, and God bless. So please, guys, can you put the video on, and then we can close the meeting?
Okay. Sharing the future. But when generations unite, change becomes unstoppable. Welcome to Hesed World,
we can't
where
see
youth
anything.
empowerment
Okay.
begins,
You have to
where
start again, please.
generations connect, and where change is ignited. Hesed World is a Swiss association headquartered in international Geneva, committed to unlocking Africa's potential by creating clear pathways for young people facing limited opportunities. Guided by global partnership and African empowerment, we are building a connected ecosystem that supports young people to grow, lead, and thrive. We are currently implementing pilot initiatives across Nigeria, Kenya, and Malawi, working with partners who share our vision for sustainable development and youth opportunity. At Hesed World, we focus on 3 key pillars: mentorship and leadership development, connecting young people with experienced professionals for values-driven guidance and shared learning; skills and vocational training, equipping youth with practical, digital, and vocational skills for meaningful work and long-term stability; youth and community engagement, enabling young people to take ownership and contribute to stronger, more resilient communities. At our core, we believe Africa's youth are not problems to be solved, but solutions waiting to be unlocked. By 2030, we aim to empower 10,000 plus young people, engage 500 plus global mentors, support the launch of hundreds to thousands of youth-led enterprises. Because Hesed World is not just preparing youth for the future, we are preparing the world for a youth-led future. Will you build that future with us?